This is a tutorial on Grim Dawn in using the mod to create additional creatures and to take a look at the Dawn Infinity mod, which is in process. So this is the game window that's open, and I'm going to minimize that and just show a couple things off first. So in the Grim Dawn folder, you're going to have several different tools in here to open up the database, the world editor, dealing with bitmaps and graphics and things like that. So I've taken those out and placed them up on the top. So we're basically going to look at these 5 icons here. And I'm going to start out with the editor to basically show what creature is going to look like and selecting which one that we're going to use. So on here, I'm not going to go over the defaults of setting this stuff up. There's other guides for that. So this is just kind of jumping right into once you're already set up. Some of those guides do show how to set up the modding tutorial, which is what we're going to use. So you'll have all the files already ready to go, and then the tutorial world. So we're going to open that up. And this is the actual tutorial world. I've added a few things to it. So this was the starting map, but I've been expanding on it to add in some stuff in the development. And over here, this is the creature that we're going to use. This was labeled as a scavenger on here. And I do have a spreadsheet to keep track of these. So scavengers here is basically what we're going to be modifying here. Now this one is already in the game. And if you go into the records here, this does have the records for all of the expansions and the normal game if you just go into enemies and just add all this stuff in here. But what we're going to do with this is we're going to create our own copy so we can modify all the stats, skills, and whatever this mob does. Its run speed, all of that. So we would just go in and grab it as the scavenger and then add it onto the map, just like this. But this is the one that we're going to use. So now that we know what that is, we're going to go ahead and close out of this for a moment. And we're going to go into the asset manager. So this is the entire database of everything. So we are going to select the mod. The modding tutorial is what we're using. And in the database, we're going to add it into creatures here. Now, when you first open this up, if you've just got it set up, one of the confusing things was where are all the things? Because if you look in the enemy list, you only have a few things here by default. You actually do have access to everything right off the start. You just have to move them into these folders if you just want to change them in your mod. So if we select and go back to none, this database actually contains all of the records in the normal game. But we do not want to be changing these, so we're going to go back to the mod. And then we're going to go to the records, creatures, and enemies. And then we're just going to pull that record into this. So that one was a scavenger. And that is the actual record, so we won't actually need to pull that one, but I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like anyways. So we're going to import a record. From the records, creatures, same thing, enemies, and then you just find it in this list. So scavenger AO1. And then what that did is it pulled it into our own records here. So when we go back to creatures, it's going to be there now. Now there's 2 records that go into this. This is basically the main controls of the creature and size and some variables in there. And then inside of that, we also have BIOS in here. These are mainly just the stats for that creature. If you don't have this file structure in here by default, and some of these will be missing, you can just right click on these, create directory, and create whatever you need. Because if you're going to pull this in and you don't have a BIOS folder, for example, you're going to need to create that before you pull this in. So we have the scavenger here. We're going to rename this. We're just going to clean them up a little bit. And this is just going to be our scavenger. And then in the BIOS, we want to do the same thing. Now we have our records for it. Now there are a few ties back to this that are important on here. So we're going to go back to enemies first, and then we're going to look at what that database record looks like. So we have a couple things here to check out. Character level on here. In this mod specifically, we're not using scaling on here. That's why this has this multiplier about the level. We are just doing a set level on this. So this one is going to be 10. And then the experience points here, you may see that a lot of those are 0 by default on there. With the modifications that are done on here, it is specifically going to be, you'll need to enter these in for this. Okay, actor variables on here. This scaling is a very nice feature. So what we saw in the beginning, that was the normal scaling that's on here. But if we double all these, we will just end up with a larger image for that. And this character bio here. So we've renamed all these. So this does need to be updated because this is pointing to a record that no longer exists in there. So this needs to be updated to our record that we just created. And be careful with this because there are 2 records in here. These are the records from the regular game. The second records folder is the one that's on this mod specifically. So we want to point that to, and that's actually the bio one. It's this record. And then we're going to save that. And then on build, make sure on here that you are on your own mod. So we're on tutorial, that's fine. We're going to go ahead and build this. And then we're going to go back to the editor, which is the game world. Modding tutorial. And now in the records here, when we look through creatures, enemies, we should have our new one, which is just the scavenger. So this one here is a bit larger. That was our scaling on there. And all the stats that we apply to this one will be on here. So we'll go back here in a second and do that. So we'll go ahead and save this. And then our records, so we did the enemies on here, but the bio as well. So the scavenger bio on here is going to have all of its stats. And that's why you also have the spreadsheet on here to kind of show and keep track of everything for scaling purposes and just knowing what all is in the game. I'm going to leave these default stats here and clean this stuff up later. This is just for showing the demonstration. Then we're going to open it up and see what the game looks like. And actually, I already have a copy open here still. Okay, so we have both of them there, and this one is got quite some size to it. And I've done the same thing up here. So this is an example of the zombie lord up here. hits quite hard. And that's the basic example of just creating a creature on here. So it may do other videos showing basically how to do all the land and terrain. Here's some examples of just some of the stuff that's created. This is in very early development, so basically going through and making a lot of modifications, creating an entire game world, and just making a completely new world out of Grim Dawn. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.